Hello, everybody. I'm Vince Happick. I want to thank you all for coming today. I'd also like to thank Admiral Gomer for bringing in Vice Admiral here. A bit about Vice Admiral Robinson. Received his Doctor of Medicine degree from Indiana University School of Medicine and entered Naval Service in 1977. Did his surgical internship at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine in Springfield. He holds fellowships in the American College of Surgeons and American College of Colorectal Surgery. And he has served on numerous ships, been commanding officer of various fleet hospitals, and holds many service medals and awards. So, without further ado, please help me welcome the 36th Surgeon General of the Navy and Chief of the Navy's Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, Vice Admiral Adam Robinson, Jr.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now, for those of you who didn't stand, why not? First of all, thank you very much. I've had a wonderful visit here. Dean Reed, thank you so much for all the things that you've done here through the years. Ben Gomer, thank you so much for all that you've done for the Navy and the nation in your years of service. And thank you very much for inviting me to Des Moines and actually bringing me here. How many people are HPSP? Good. I knew there were more that are not in uniform. You don't have to be in uniform. I just wanted to know. HPSP, Health Profession Scholarship Program. What I want to do is talk. Adam Robinson is my name. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. Went to school in Indiana University. Did an internship at Southern Illinois University. Did my general surgery residency training at National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. Went to Japan for a couple of years. Was a ship surgeon on the USS Midway. Came back and went to the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana and did a colon and rectal fellowship. Came back to the National Naval Medical Center and started about a 20-year ride doing surgery, teaching residents, and being a program director. So most of my years in the Navy have been in teaching and program director, and my whole goal when I came in the Navy was to be the most outstanding surgeon that you've ever seen and to be a professor of surgery. And I think Dr. Reed can relate to that very well. I wanted to be the best at what I did, and then I got caught up in colon and rectal surgery, and I certainly wanted to master that, and I think that I did, in fact, have an opportunity to master that. But then I found out that I didn't know all the ins and outs of what makes a career, that there are so many different intersections that come together, and so I've gotten out of the practice of medicine and surgery, as it were, but I've gone into the larger practice of medicine on a global stage. When I came into the Navy, I was talking this morning at Mercy Hospital. I didn't want to have anything to do with the Navy other than the Navy paid for my education, and so I thought it was a pretty cool thing to be an HPSP scholar. I was in the first scholarship class in 1972. But to be very honest with you, I did not appreciate nor did I respect the institution, that is the United States Navy, or it could have been the Air Force or the Army. I didn't really respect the institution that was paying for my medical education. I didn't respect it because I didn't really understand it and I didn't know what it was. And what I mean by that is I knew exactly what it was like to be in a small town in the Midwest that has beautiful Indian summer days. I knew what it was like to sweat through anatomy tests. I knew what it was like to partner with a group of individuals and try to get through physiology and try to get through all of the things that I had to learn for cell membrane kinetics. But I didn't know what it was like to serve with men and women in different and distant locations, some of them very dangerous, in a situation where you actually had to depend upon one another if you were going to survive. Now, when I was in medical school, I thought that the study groups I was in, I had to depend on because I was trying to survive. I wasn't the smartest pup in the litter, as they say. But I didn't realize that the type of survival that I didn't know much about was that actual physical survival that makes you count on that shipmate next to you because you're never any stronger than the weakest link. That is a true saying, ladies and gentlemen. So one of the things that I learned very quickly was that we have to depend on one another in this world. That's number one. And number two, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't respect the Navy. I didn't know the Navy. So therefore, I spent my HPSP years at Indiana University doing everything but paying any attention to my career and my potential career in the military. Didn't do any out-service rotations, didn't do any externships at any of the Navy facilities, spent all of my time at the university and tried to ingratiate myself with the professors at Indiana and at the different local hospitals because I wanted to do residency there. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough, so I didn't get into the Indiana's program or any of the local programs. And I wasn't smart enough because I hadn't paid attention to what I needed to do in the Navy, so they didn't know who I was, and I didn't get a residency with them. So I ended up getting a residency at Southern Illinois University, a first-rate place, a place that I absolutely loved. And I went there, in Springfield, and spent that year in 1976-77, and tried my best to divest myself of all of my Navy associations. Didn't want to have anything to do with it. Until finally the detailer called me and said, you better come on and get on board quickly because we have to cut you orders and we have to deploy you someplace. And I said, I don't want to deploy. I've been offered a residency here. I don't want to come. I don't want to have anything to do with the Navy anymore. And he said, you can talk to me or you can talk to the U.S. Marshal. You're laughing, but it was true. So I finally decided to take the set of orders that he gave me. In taking those orders, I went off to Puerto Rico. I had a nice time there. I'm not going to go through all the things that I did this morning. I will only let you know this. I learned lessons as a general medical officer that I never would have learned unless I had gone into that particular area of my life and had spent that year with the people that I was with that taught me so much about what it was like to actually practice medicine, care for people, and as I said this morning, learn to listen to your patients. And that was a lesson that I learned at the beginning of my postgraduate time in medicine, but it's a lesson that I have never forgotten no matter how far I've gotten in medicine. That is to listen to your patients. Your connection is not to the books and your connection are not to the laboratory. It's not to the x-rays. It's not to the laboratory results. Your connection are to the human beings that you have to care for and you have to connect with if you're going to make a difference in their life, and they too will make a difference in your life if you have allowed that connection to take place. The science of medicine is important, and you need to know that, but the art of medicine is what makes you different, and is what gives your patients the ability to help themselves in their recovery from illness. So those things you must remember, and I hope that you will, in fact, never forget that as you embark upon your careers. The second thing is, I wasn't respectful of the institution that had given me the ability to start and to come forward in medicine and to get the start that I needed. That was the Navy. And shortly after I became into the Navy and finished my residency at Bethesda, shortly after I got to Japan and was on the USS Midway, I realized that I was happier than I'd ever been in my life, and I was with the best group of men and women that I could ever be with. And it hit me one day that there is no other place that I'd rather be than in the USS, or than in the U.S. Navy. And then it became clear to me that I was doing things that I could never do in the venues and the halls that I'd come from in Kentucky and in Indiana and in Illinois. But those places were also very interesting because floating around the South China Sea on a 50,000-pound displaced carrier isn't always the most exciting existence in your life. And certainly I felt like time and people were passing me by. But there were experiences in service, and there were experiences in leadership, and there were experiences in clinical activities that I could never have, nor could I reproduce anyplace else. So when I'm talking to you, what I'm asking you to do is this. Number one, remember you don't know what you don't know. Number two, explore all possibilities. You don't know what those possibilities may be until you actually look at them critically. Number three, never forget the rule of first principles. Probably I should start that as number one. What's the rule of first principles? You have to always take care of first things first. What does that mean? All right, in medicine, rule of first principles. It's always about your patients. It's never about the money. It's never about the business. It's always about the patient. That makes no sense, Robinson. You know, Gates is off in his efficiency moves in DOD, and he's saying, well, you got to cut a lot out of medicine. That's true. But I won't cut medicine to the destruction or to the non-benefit of my patients. Because remember this, in Navy medicine, we have a concept of care. It is patient and family-centered care. We must never get away from that as a first principle and as a basic concept. If we stay on that concept, we will never really miss the mark in doing what we need to do. First principles. You must do what is the most important thing to do. What are first principles for you? First principles for you are this. Number one, you have to be professionally competent. That means you have to study, you have to get your license, you have to get your certifications, you have to do all the things that you need to do. Now here is the really interesting news. You will get that done at this level in your life. You will feel that you have accomplished a great deal, and you have, and then you will come to the realization that this is the first certification of about 35 more you're going to do before you're out of this business. So it is a lifelong challenge. It never stops. But that's what you signed up for, so you need to recognize it will always be there. Recertification, relicensure is nothing but a way of saying you are professionally competent and ready to go. Number two, you have to be personally ready. If you're not planning and taking time to care for yourself in recreation and your families and those people who mean something to you, your significant others, then you will not be capable of doing your job. You won't be able to do the first thing. And that is take care of your patients and remain professionally competent. And number three, you must be spiritually ready. You must be spiritually alert. What does that mean? You must recognize that life is not about you and that you are not the center of the universe. Life is about much more than you. You are an integral peg in what occurs, but you are not the most important thing in what occurs, even if you think you are. And if you think you are, and if you think I'm wrong, go ahead. But you'll find out very soon, or very late, that you are not the integral part of what makes this world go round. What does Navy do? Navy goes around and sells on ships. Navy goes to Afghanistan and Iraq and takes care of wounded people, just as Army and as Air Force does. What has Navy done in terms of humanitarian assistance and disaster relief? Your dean asked that question and he said, is this something relatively new? And that's a great question because most people think that it is. But humanitarian assistance and disaster relief have been going on actually for all of the service militaries as long as the services have existed. Certainly there are many examples of humanitarian assistance with the United States Navy. What we have done in recent years, and what I applaud Dr. Shaw and the Global Health Initiative that you have going